Running injuries should be speed bumps, not roadblocks. Now, running injury rates are alarmingly high, far higher than in most recreational sports. Most studies estimate running injury rates at around 50% each year, meaning that if you look around at the running club next time you go, about half of the runners there will get injured this year. Or said another way, most runners can expect to get injured every second year. This is in spite of an enormous amount of research in the last 20 years into running injury rehabilitation and prevention. This is also despite the emergence of running specific health professionals like me and various social media influencers, the improvement in running training technologies, GPS apps and things like that, not to mention the improvements in running technology in the shoes and various recovery modalities and self-treatment tools for the home. We also know a ton more about nutrition and recovery and sleep and stress and their role in injuries. And despite all of this, running injury rates have not changed. And to be perfectly honest, I don't really expect them to. Today's runner does not look or act like one of the Tarahumara. We don't spend our whole day running around hunting, foraging. We don't spend our entire day on our feet working and then to go to bed under the stars with a belly full of whole foods from the surrounding environment. We spend most of our days sitting at desks, on sofas, or in cars. We spend our evenings in air-conditioned houses watching giant LCD screens or watching or looking at a phone that is specifically designed to light up our nervous system. Physically, at least, we just have easier lives. This weakens our body and makes us more vulnerable to injury. But we are still quite stressed. You could argue maybe even more so than in previous times. Our sleep is often worse than it would have been in the past, and our diet could usually be better than it is. Now, running is an extremely repetitive sport. That is why it is so prone to causing repetitive stress injuries. And the unfortunate fact is that if you run more, you will probably race faster. So us runners are incentivized to push our body to run as much as we possibly can. However, this puts us at risk for those repetitive stress injuries. All the while, our modern lifestyle leaves us weak and deconditioned and less injury resilient. Now, these are massive social, cultural, anthropological factors that are just not going to be counteracted by a fancy warm-up routine or a new massage gun. Injury rates among runners will remain high, and this is a consequence of the nature of the sport, the repetitive nature of the sport, juxtapositioned with the weakening of the physical modern human. So you might be wondering, what's the point in me? I am a physiotherapist turned running coach who's dedicated his entire professional life to rehabilitating and trying to prevent running injuries. So if it is so hopeless, why do I bother? Now, honestly, I'd be lying if I said I'd never considered this myself. I think most of us do at some time. You wonder how effective you are at really helping the people that you serve in your work. And most of us are small cogs in a big wheel. And it's a natural thing to wonder, how much difference am I really making? But something has kept me going on this mission to help recreational runners overcome injuries over the last decade. And I think recently I've found the words to kind of describe it a little better. You see, it's not really just about the running injuries themselves. Injuries are just neutral. They're just a thing that happens. It's the effect of those injuries. It's the negative impact that they can have on our lives. That is what I'm interested in. Now, one runner who develops knee pain might have to modify their training for a few weeks. Another runner might have to miss a whole season and a couple of races because of that same knee pain. Another runner might end up getting injections and a total knee replacement, and another runner might end up having such a bad experience with it that they quit running for good, become weak and fat and old, and have a miserable retirement. And these are the effects of the running injuries. This is the impact that they have on people's lives. It's the difference between a speed bump and a roadblock. Speed bumps just make us slow down. Roadblocks make us stop. We want to make running injuries mild setbacks. These are speed bumps. We don't want them to change the trajectory of our life. Those are roadblocks. This is why I'm so passionate about helping runners. And Marcella is a perfect example of this. Now, Marcella had originally contacted me because she had a long-standing back issue. And she'd fallen in love recently with running, particularly with marathons and 50K races. And she found that she was pretty good at them, but most of all, she just loved doing them. But she was worried about this back injury. She was worried that she was going to make it worse, potentially jeopardize her long-term ability to participate in these events that she was finding so much joy in. So Marcella enrolled in our recovery program, which is the program that we use to take runners out of pain and get them back to full training. And the express goal of the recovery program is to get rid of the pain and get back to full training. So we focus all of our efforts on getting rid of the pain. That's the point of the recovery program. And we do this by addressing the 3 critical components, as I say all the time, right? Build the muscles, strengthen the structures, refine the techniques. And that is what we did with Marcella. We redesigned Marcella's training program around these 3 critical components, and she was able to progress beyond this back pain and get back to running pain-free. And within the 3 months of working with us, she was able to run a 50K race pain-free and felt amazing at the end. Now, at that point, Marcella moved into our performance program. So this is where we switch the goal, the primary focus, from pain to performance. Now that the pain was no longer holding Marcella back, we were free to focus on her performance to try and take her to the next level. And Marcella's goal, or at least her next goal, was to try and qualify for Boston in the marathon. So we dialed in her training zones. We incorporated working max focus lifts to push up her strength. We dialed up the volume and intensity of her training, and we did all of these things in an effort to get Marcella in the kind of shape where she could run a sub 3:50 marathon. Now, this is the difficult part, because in order to take Marcella to that next level, we have to push her body to adapt. The objective of the performance program is to improve performance. And the harder that you push the body, the more stimulus there is to adapt, the better the performance will be. The trouble is, if you push too hard, something will break. It's a little bit like if you had a Formula One driver driving around the track at the Monte Carlo Grand Prix. They have an accelerator and a brake pedal. If they only had an accelerator, they wouldn't make it around one lap. So they have to tap the brake pedal periodically in order to make sure that they get where they want to go. Unfortunately, in an effort to improve Marcella's performance and hit that 3:50 marathon, we pushed her too hard. We hit the accelerator too much and didn't use the brakes enough. 13 weeks before that Vancouver marathon that she was going to attempt to get this Boston qualifying time in, she developed a knee pain that was so bad that she couldn't run on it for a whole week. Now, obviously, this was a major setback for Marcella, but she responded to it in exactly the way I would have hoped. She leaned into her coaching for support, and we adjusted her training program to make getting rid of the pain and getting back to full training the primary focus again. In a sense, she had stepped back into the recovery phase or the recovery program, where the primary objective is to get rid of the pain, because at that time, the pain was the primary barrier between her and performing well in the marathon. There wasn't any point focusing on her performance because the pain was the most likely thing to limit that performance. So we had to focus on the pain first, resolve that, and then come back to our performance objectives. This meant sacrificing the volume and intensity and specificity of our training to focus on things that would put the painful area within the adaptive zone so that it would adapt, become less sensitive, more resilient, and we could get Marcella back to full training. Now, going back to run walks at this part in time made Marcella really nervous, understandably. She was only 13 weeks away from the marathon. She should have been building up her long run if she was focused on performance, but she knew that the knee couldn't handle that. So she trusted the process, we made the adjustments, and then we held her hand every step of the way. Her knee calmed down, and we were able to slowly build her back up. Within 3 weeks, she was back to running 30 minutes continuously, and then within 5 weeks, she was back to running long runs at around an hour and 45 minutes without any knee pain at all. 8 weeks later, Marcella ran that Vancouver marathon, and she did it in 3:53, just 3 minutes shy of her sub 350 Boston qualifying cutoff goal. Although it was a new personal record for Marcella, and she did finish the race with a beaming smile on her face, having had a wonderful day, and the best part was she didn't have any knee pain at all. Now, for many other runners, that knee pain would have been a roadblock, but for Marcella, she'd been diligently working on her 3 critical components for the last 6 months, building her muscles, strengthening her structures, refining her technique. When the pain came on, Marcella leaned into her coaching team. We were able to make the adjustments and support her through that recovery process again. Marcella's training did have to be modified for a few weeks, but she was able to keep running, and she was able to do her race, and she was even able to get a PR. That is a speed bump. Another runner might have had to pull out of that race, maybe miss months of training, end up getting injections, maybe surgery, maybe it goes so badly that they end up quitting running forever. That is a roadblock. And I should know, in my first 5 years of running, I hit roadblocks every year. I attempted 4 times to qualify to complete a marathon, and I hit a roadblock during the training period every single time, an injury that was so bad that I had to pull out and wasn't able to do the marathon. I was so frustrated that I almost quit running for good. And just imagine that. Instead of dedicating my entire professional life to running, I quit and don't run anymore. I'd never get to run that marathon. I'd never get to cross the finish line at Montreal, knowing that it took me 5 years, but that I didn't quit and I made it in the end. I'd never get to spend hundreds of hours running, pushing my son Lachlan in the stroller to train for future marathons. We wouldn't get to do long runs and take a break at the park halfway, and then I could watch him fall asleep on the way home listening to the Wiggles. And if you can't tell, these are some of my most precious memories, and I can't imagine not having running in my life. And nowadays, I still get injured, just like you guys. The difference is that my running injuries just aren't as big a deal now. I modify my training for a few weeks, and then I'm back on track, and I keep running the whole time. My injuries are speed bumps, not roadblocks, and that's because I encourage all of you to do, work on the 3 critical components diligently. Strengthen the structures, build the muscles, and refine the technique. So make sure that you do the work to prepare your body for the injuries that will inevitably come up. This will not be your last injury. You will have more, and you will have flare-ups of this injury on your road to recovery. Focusing on those 3 critical components will allow you to lay the foundation that makes sure that your next injury or the next flare-up of this injury is a speed bump and not a roadblock. Injuries should not be these catastrophic events that change the trajectory of our life. They should be minor inconveniences that make us slow down for a little while, but ultimately just make the story that much more interesting in the end. Running injuries should be speed bumps, not roadblocks. The key takeaway here is to focus on the long term. When you face setbacks, which you will, focus on the 3 critical components. Focus on the long term. Lean into your coaching team for support. Even if you face no setbacks with this injury, this will not be the last injury that you have. But laying that foundation by building the muscles, strengthening the structures, and refining the technique, leaning into your coaching team for support, this will allow you to build the kind of resilience and skill in training to make sure that your future injuries are speed bumps, not roadblocks. And these inevitable speed bumps that come up and the potential for roadblocks are one of the reasons that we have a performance coaching program. And the idea there is to keep you working on those 3 critical components and to hold your hand to get through those setbacks. Once we get rid of this injury, to take it to the next level, whatever that looks like for you, it's not going to be a straight line. There are going to be speed bumps. There's going to be potential roadblocks. And we want to help you make sure that you get through them safely. So if you want to keep working with us long term into that performance coaching phase and take it to the next level, then we'd love to have you. And this is how we'll help make sure that you get to keep running for the rest of your life.